What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Kairi Thomas-Brooks, and I'm coming back to you live with another 21 Questions. I'm an aspiring civil rights lawyer. I'm a junior in high school, and I'm an advisor to this amazing initiative called Hey Blue. Hey Blue has been facilitating connections between police officers and community members for 2 years now. Here on our show, 21 Questions, I bring officers on from across the nation to talk about serious topics in our society going on today. Here on our show, I'll be able to ask the officer 10 questions. The officer will ask me 10 questions, and our 21st question will come from our viewers. Without further ado, I would like to introduce my next guest, Officer Joel Allen from the NYPD.
Hello, thank you for inviting me on the show.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Do you mind telling me a little bit about yourself?
No, not at all. So my name is Joel Allen. I'm employed by the New York City Police Department for 13 years. I'm also in the Air Force as a reservist, med tech. I'm a father of one. In my spare time, I started a nonprofit with one of my good friends, Vinny Variano, Cops Who Care Incorporated. I've always been involved in the community. I also help with Cops and Kids NYC, which is a boxing program in New York. Gyms in New York City we put out, and what else? Yep, three free gyms in New York City, which basically give kids a safe haven and off the streets.
That's cool. So you and Vinny know each other. I interviewed him a few episodes ago. He's a really nice dude.
Yeah, he's great.
That's great that you guys teamed up to make a non-for-profit. That's amazing.
Yeah, we did.
So, officer, my first question to you is going to be, what made you want to become a police officer?
Okay. So, first of all, I'm not working. Please just call me Joel.
Okay.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned before, Cops and Kids boxing program, before it was Cops and Kids boxing program, the PAL, Police Athletic League, had a boxing program, and I was a part of it. I would come, train, work out, and I got the opportunity, as a child, 16, 17, to meet different police officers. We boxed together, some of us trained together, and the question would come up like, hey, the NYPD has a boxing team. Why don't you come join? You get to travel. And I was like, oh, wow. I get paid to box and be a police officer. But,
Right.
It really, I guess, interacting as a teenager with police officers made me want to explore that a little bit more. And then, of course, I was always seeing what was happening. And, you're going to get people that, feel some way about police and might feel the other way. So, you know what, why not do it? If there's an issue, I would be great at being a member of the NYPD Police Department. So I said, you know what, this is what I want to do. I want to make a difference, and I still want to box. So
Now, when you say positive interactions, and you didn't say that, but that's what's coming through my head. When you say interactions with the police, do you mean positive interactions drove you or negative interactions drove you?
No, of course, positive interactions drove me. Oh, yes. We're in the boxing ring, so some police officers would step in. I was like, oh, this is my chance.
Right.
But it was a great program, and unfortunately, the PAL, for whatever reasons may be, the city had to cut that program. But Cops and Kids took over. And that's also a nonprofit that sponsors 3 free gyms in New York City. And I've been involved in the program ever since I became a police officer.
Well, that's good. I was wondering, crossed my mind. I'm like, ooh, negative, or, because some people get into a career field because they had like a bad experience and they're like, oh, I want to be the change. But that's good that you had a positive interaction. That's like, hey, I want to do this. It drove you to do that. That's really great. So Officer, or Joel, sorry, it's a habit. It's hard, right? It's a habit. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not working. You're just talking to Joel.
Okay, so my second question for you will be, have you ever personally addressed a colleague about racial discrimination or injustice that may be going on in your workplace?
Honestly, that's a good question. I have these conversations, at least with my colleagues over the years, have been open, and we all have different opinions. That's what I guess the NYPD is great at, since we're such a diverse police department. So there's always been, at least from my experience, open dialogue about that. There is nothing. I've disagreed with colleagues on maybe a situation, based on how they went about it, or maybe like you need to relax a little bit. But nothing that I would say was, I would have to interfere, or, as far as racial discrimination. But there's always been issues that, people think differently.
Right.
So there's always been that type of dialogue that has gone on.
That's good, because you need that in a workplace. That question just like came to me because, sometimes in schools, like we have those conversations and they can get like extremely uncomfortable, or like if it's not a conversation that's like brought up, or if you're not a person who really likes to spark conversation like that, growing up, going into like the working field, the career field, it's sort of like bumpy. So.
And I mean, that's what makes, I guess, for the good, the bad, the ugly, the job that I chose to take so important, that I've had the opportunity to have this dialogue. I never felt that I was shut down, or maybe other people were shut down, because were all different, diverse, and diversity is deeper than skin color. So I've always had great conversations with people, colleagues, whether I disagreed or agreed, and supervisors as well, which is really important.
I have to quote you on that. You said that was so nice. Diversity is deeper than skin color. That's what you said?
Yes.
Okay. I like that. I like that. 2021. That's what we're saying. All 2021. My third question for you, Joelle, would be, have you ever been handled poorly by a police officer? Sorry, hang on. Have you ever been handled poorly by the police as a person of color? What's your advice to people of color when dealing with an aggressive or maybe biasly, like racially charged officer?
Okay. So in my personal life, I've had encounters with police officers. I've had one encounter that was good. I didn't have an issue with it. I understood where they were coming from. They were polite. They handled everything, fine. They were doing their job in essence. They got called to do. Another time, I didn't think it was racially motivated, because it was on a car stop, but the officer was nasty. And listen, I understand, as a police officer, it's hard. You're dealing with the public. I mean, I go through a lot. I'm sure other officers do all over the country. But I mean, courtesy, professionalism, respect is something that we all need to remind, ourselves, that we have to, because I mean, he really, came at me. I was like, listen. But when I'm talking to the community and I'm talking to kids of color, well, I'm talking to anybody, but specifically kids of color, I really try to put myself in their shoes. And I said, I can understand what you're saying. I wasn't born a police officer. I became a police officer at 23. So I grew up as a kid dealing with, the police, school, like just different entities. So they, therefore, I can understand, how you might feel, but you also have to put yourself in that officer's shoes. You don't know the surrounding story on why, this person is interacting with you. As far as in the NYPD, every day there's, I mean, don't quote me on this, but it's pretty high. It's over 1 million 911 calls for. It's insane. So
That's a lot.
yeah, officers are put under a lot of stress.
Right.
So a lot of times, somebody's like, I didn't do something. Why am I being targeted? But you don't know, what was on the other line of, maybe your radio run that said something. The time that I was stopped, that was, I didn't have an issue with why I was stopped. I was coming out of a store, I was coming out of the Louis Vuitton store, and these officers in plain clothes, they said, sir, it was fine, sir, can I, see the credit card you paid with? And I didn't even address at the time, that I was a police officer, because it was just such a straightforward conversation. I don't know why the store, I guess you had an issue with it. They've been having credit card fraud. And so my issue wasn't with the police. My issue was with that store. And trust me, I spent enough money in that store. They got a lot of letters. Right. I mean, if there was an issue, we could have addressed it inside. Right. You sent the police and put the police in a bad position, because now everybody sees them stopping me, surrounding me. Right. Now, how does that look? What's the perception of that? And it could have been handled better, but I understand the other side because I'm a police officer. Why'd you put, and my thing is, why'd you put that police officer in that situation?
Right. Okay. So I like how you can see it from both sides. And especially, you addressed that you were, a person of color. So it's like, you very well understand everything else, you know what I mean? So that's great how you can take, like, hey, like just now, like, you want me to call you Joel, which is great, you know what I mean? Because like outside of the badge, you are you know what I mean? You don't always want to be called officer, which I completely understand. So, you're seeing it from both sides, and I can agree, a credit card fraud, I'd be like, oh yeah, I spent a whole bunch of money in this store. So, and I can see where they were like, they put them in a position, because sometimes it really is like what camera angle everything's being shot at, you know what I mean? Because everyone can make something seem like what it's not. So I can see where you're coming from.
Absolutely.
So my fourth question to you, Joel, would be, what verbiage or vernacular would you use to convince or like flip a person who is being racially, like, who's like being racist to being an ally? So what words would you use to convince somebody who was like, all Black people or people of color deserve to be slaves? How would you change their mind?
Wow, that's a tough one. Wow, that's a good question. I understand that people lack perspective, and I think that's such a huge thing. So, everybody's perception of something is their reality. So if someone had a negative racial image, like, well, look at these thugs, or, triggering words, savages, right? These triggering words that some people of color, like, we really take offense to. It's like, I basically try to break it down in the simplest term. I think a lot of times we use words like, oh, this racist, and then, but there's deeper, we got to get to deeper definitions to really show people's bias. Because listen, we all have bias, tendencies as human beings. So I really try to get to the root of the problem. and I kind of take myself out of it. So when people, say things like this, that might be, I don't know, they view all people a certain way. Like whatever it is, like you said, all black people should be slaves, or maybe or all thugs. I point out to how you can't generalize and look at, and then might point out positive success stories. Robert Smith, one of my people that I look up to, smart guy, black guy, who's huge, one of the richest black men in the country. And, the things that African Americans or whoever, whatever it is, Jewish, or have attributed to America or to, the country. You can't judge, just like you don't want to be judged. And I would put myself in their shoes if it's a police officer, hypothetically. You don't want to be judged, all cops are racist or this and that. You can't really look at all people this way. There's more to it. Right. And that's hard sometimes to do, but you got to find a common ground. You got to find a connection.
Right. I agree. Because sometimes people don't even realize that it stems from a lot of the time what they're taught. So behaviors learned, and I really like psychology. So whenever I come across a person like that, I know sometimes I sort of hold my tongue because I'm okay, well, there's a reason why they're thinking like this. Well, what is it? Is it what they've been taught? Is it what they've experienced? You know what I mean? So like you said, I would try to find a story to bring up that's really positive, to try to contradict the negative that has gone on in that person's life with maybe, you know what I mean? Because some people are oh, I hate pumpkin pie because I was eating it one time and I almost choked on it, so I can't stand it. You know what I mean? But it's
yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I do. It's funny you said pumpkin pie, but I have a friend, and we were talking about, she's asking me, because I do personal training also, she was asking me about, I'm trying to gain weight, and we were going through her, I don't know, her diet, and it was oh, I hate rice, I had it. I was you had it, you had it one time, different people talk about diversity, cook
right.
it a different way. I mean, right. I don't think you should just X out rice.
So, yeah, I agree. See, I actually don't like pumpkin pie, but that's just because I just don't like the taste, and I don't like the smell of pumpkins. I've tried it multiple times, and I'm you can't.
But at least you tried it.
Right, at least I tried it. Right. Okay, officer. So my 5th question to you is, what is one of the worst calls that you've responded to?
Wow. Let me think. Worst calls that I've responded to. It's hard to name one. I'll give 3. All right, 2 I was called to, and the other one, I just happened to be there, and it's a little bit different, but it really hurt me. So the first one I think about, I was maybe 2 years on the job, new rookie, and this lieutenant's get in the car, and I just jumped in the car, and he's flying down the street, and there was we get to the crime scene. There was a woman taking her last breaths. She was shot by several times in broad daylight by an ex-lover, for lack of better words. I don't know, but it was, I don't know if it was husband was working on her, but I seen the life leave her, and that was the first time I've seen something like that, and that really hurt, and then officers were trying to do what they were doing. They were trying to get her last dying words to find out who did this, because it just happened, and it happened in broad daylight, so no respect for life. That bothered me. And she was a woman, of color. Not that that matters, but it just really, really bothered me. Second was I was called to a radio run. I was called to a radio run, and basically it was in traffic, and I guess the person behind the victim got tunnel vision. He wasn't doing anything wrong because his cell phone records were checked, and he didn't see how close the car was, and this car got sandwiched. And when we got to the crime scene, well, it's not crime scene, but we got to the accident. The car was so compacted that you couldn't even see the individual. I just seen his arm hanging out, and I went to the hospital, and the sister came, and I had to break the news to her that her brother, was deceased. And the last one was as the last one was I was a rookie also, and a child came up to me, a little girl, and me and my partner at the time was like, "Are you gonna arrest me?" And my partner, she "Oh no, sweetie, we wouldn't do that, and we wouldn't, we only, arrest bad guys," thinking that that was, the right thing to say to comfort her. Her response was, "Well, you arrested my brother, and he's not a bad guy."
That one had to. Wow. I don't know what I would have done. Like, all the ones that you've told me so far, my follow-up question to you was going to be, did you go back to work after you responded to those calls? But like the last one you just said, was she a young woman of color?
Yes, she was about a 3-year-old girl, and her mother grabbed her and smiled. I think it's about 3. She was young,
Right.
but I mean, to understand that at 3, my son is 3.5. Will just turn 4, and he finally understands I'm a police officer.
Right.
She just thought I wore a cool uniform.
Right.
So yeah, it bothered me, and when I say all these events that I just named happened when I was, rookie normally means 1 year, but within the first 3 years of my career.
Right.
So they've set the tone, or kind of prepped me for, the next 10 years
Right.
I've been on the job. So yeah.
So, what made you keep going? Like, I know, because the last one, they were all extremely terrible. The last one, I just like how you named that one, because that was sort of like a philosophy, like that was a mental sort of thing, to where, everything else was like extremely physical. But I just wanted to know, like, that was extremely traumatic. Like, what made you keep going? Like, what made you not shut down as an officer?
Honestly, it sounds like a soundbite, but officers have a higher calling. Like they're so important in society, for the good, the bad, the ugly. The things that there's always been issues, and I understand the issues of people, but I mean, when you think about it, I never met an officer that, took a missing child case, not serious, or, someone being murdered, or raped, or some of the worst things in society that happen, take it not serious. I haven't met. So when you think about this job, to protect and to serve, to deal with the public, it's you have no choice. If I don't do this job, who else is?
Right.
If someone like me, or someone like coworkers don't want this job, then who else is going to do it?
Right.
So you have to be mentally tough and strong, and you have to be resilient, and that's what that's what kept me going. I knew that I was doing something in my life that made a difference.
Kudos to you, like seriously, because I know a lot of people would shut down. You're extremely strong. Thank you for your service because, no, seriously, because that's hard. That is really hard. I used to want to go in the medical field, and my friends were like, you're gonna have to like break the news to people and things like that. And, I feel like being a lawyer, I'm gonna have to do that stuff too. There's gonna be a lot of cases that I know the guy was completely innocent, and if I go into defense or prosecution, defense, I couldn't get him off. You know what I mean? There's going to be a lot of cases I have to do where he's completely guilty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I got him off. You know what I mean? It's like, so.
It's tough. I mean, that's what. So when you think of police officers, a lot of people don't know. Like, oh, your job is to, protect the community. Dude, job is everything. If you hear my radio, the stuff that over the years have got through or got calls for, it's not. I mean, when you think of that, like, I'm not prepared to, break the news to, a family member that her brother was deceased. This woman was trembling. Right. And I was trembling because I had so much nervous energy, and I mean, it hurt. And I feel bad not only for the victim, I feel bad for the person that caused this accident, right, because he was on suicide watch. He's like, did I kill him? So, I mean, our jobs are so, it's more than, and what I would want people to understand is it's more than just arresting people. It's me. I've got called to houses. Can you talk to my son? I'm like, I'm not a counselor. Okay. You know what I mean? I'm going to try, mediation, lost children, helping, all medical, at least in New York, all medical issues, with EMS, the police are there, fires, the police are there. I mean, we get caught. Mental health is the newest thing. I mean, literally my job now in the NYPD, that's 90% of what I deal with, the mentally ill and homeless. So we do more than, I don't want to say what we get credit for, but we do more than what people know.
Right. I feel like a lot of people don't give credit for that. You know what I mean? It's like everyone gets caught up in like, this is what they're supposed to do. But like you said, like we said earlier, people have like a very like vague description of things because they only see it from like one area. They get tunnel vision, and it's like, you know what I mean? So, yeah. But thank you for your service. I like, seriously, I'm not sorry that you went through, because it made you like a better person. You know what I mean? But thank you, So
I appreciate that, but I'm just one of many, because I don't think I'm special. There's so many that do the same thing and feel, the same way about this. And it comes from a diverse group. We all don't look alike. We all aren't in the same financial, standings. People actually care.
Right. So, or Joel, sorry, it's gonna be on. That's what's gonna be on. Sorry. So you mentioned that you were a personal trainer. That was actually one of my questions. How do you think that this has helped you form connections with others? Do you feel like it's been easier for you? Do you feel like it's been harder for you?
I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
I said that earlier. You mentioned that you're a personal trainer. That was actually one of my questions. The question was, how has this helped you build relationships? Has it made it easier or harder for you?
As a personal trainer?
Yes. Just being involved with boxing and everything like that.
Sorry. It's being involved in, boxing, sports. I've always been in the gym. I've always, combat sports, boxing, MMA, all this stuff. I was like, oh boy, you guys put up. But whether it's a weightlifting gym or boxing gym, MMA gym, you have different facets of life. You have people, different colors, ethnicities. You have people, different financial standings. You have so much diversity, and you know what? They all come together as one. One of the programs, Cops and Kids NYC, it's in troubled neighborhoods. So one of them in Brooklyn, New York, this gym, it has so many kids that Caucasian kids that come from maybe other neighborhoods, some in that neighborhoods, but far other neighborhoods. So when they come in the gym, and you see them, they're about their business. You know what I mean? They can compete, they can box. So it's just bringing people together. So I think as a personal trainer, I'm able to connect on a different level. No, you're not connecting with the police officer. I want you to connect with the person first.
Right.
Being a police officer is the career I chose. You're connecting with me as a person.
Right. I think that's the fun thing about sports, because I play basketball. And especially, I might be on the court because I'm really competitive. I'm like number 20. She's not getting a shot off on me, but by the end of the game, she's like, you have a nice crossover. I'm like, yeah, that shot, like, it's butter. Like, you know what I mean? But, by the end, I feel like everyone's like, you can find something in common. I think that's really cool.
Yes. Yes.
So my 8th question to you, Joelle, will be, so basically, it's been said that in order for police officers to get along with people of color, the officer has to be a person of color. Do you feel like, well, it's like 2 in 1. So have you ever felt like mentoring teens, which obviously you do? You know what I mean? You don't even have to answer that question for me. You know what I mean? Like, you're in the community, you're there all the time. So that my second question, and the other one would be, do you feel like if there was more officers of color, it would be a little bit easier to connect with kids of color?
Yes and no, because our skin color is not deep enough. How can I word this? Is not a strong enough just bond, just us being of color. Like, what if there's more to it. So right. That's not just so it was like, I'm black. Well, that doesn't mean that. I mean, so what? You know everything. You know what this person's struggles are. I have friends through the military and through just all walks of life all over the country that of all ethnicities, but some that are black, that we've had different experiences. We have had different experiences with law enforcement. Right. We have had different experiences, and I'm leaving stuff out. I didn't have all good experiences. I just was better equipped how to deal with them.
Right.
Or maybe some other people. So, New York City, like I said, NYPD is the most diverse police department in the world, I believe. I know, definitely in the country. I mean, I don't want to get into numbers. You could look that up, but it's like 50-something% of patrol are African American, Latino, and Asian. So we have a lot of that, but people relate to. I'll give you a story. People relate to things on a different level. I had a guy last night who was a little bit, he was overly intoxicated and he was being aggressive, and we're trying to calm him down, and I'm trying to, don't say anything that triggers him, triggering, right. Like, calm down. Don't do anything like that. But, he kept saying about shoot. And I was like, what the heck is this kid talking about? He's talking about basketball. He's talking about basketball. I can't shoot. So we made a whole thing. I was like, you ain't Kobe. Because I'll shoot your lights out. Some people were like, oh, the crowd is like, he's talking about basketball. Like, right. I understood. So since I played basketball, I was able to relate to him and calm him down. I think that's what community policing is. We're all different. Being a police officer is a job, is a career. I mean, it's more than a job, it's a career. But we all, I wasn't born with a shield. Like, we all have a story, and we all have things we can relate to other people on, and it's deeper than skin color. Like when you met my friend Vincent Mariani, he was on the show. I mean, like he loves basketball. Like he connects in the community.
Right.
More popular than me in the Black community that I live in. Just because people know him, because he's always he just wants to talk about the things that he cares about, basketball and relating to people. So I think it's more about relatability than always about race. Race helps, but you need more than that.
Right. I agree, because I'm into like spirituality. My dad is too, which I find really cool. So I learn a lot of that from him. But what I was gonna say is, like, I feel like everyone has a higher self and lower self. So I feel like if you can connect with everyone's higher self and the self ego, it's like way deeper than what you're saying, skin color. Because once you find common ground with somebody, you're sort of like, okay, it's not that bad. You know what I mean? So I totally agree. And that's amazing, because I wish everybody thought that way. And sadly, not everybody does, but it's okay. We're getting there.
We are getting there.
So my ninth question for you, Joelle, would be that if studies show that police departments that hire people who have like a higher education, they have like lower, how do I phrase this question? They have lower accounts of police brutality. So do you feel as if like graduating college, or going to college or not going to college, which, that doesn't mean anything, because, there's so many jobs out there that you can go and you don't even need a degree for it, and they get paid millions of dollars. But how do you feel like this has an effect on society?
I'm sorry, because the first part of your question got a little broken up. Can you repeat it one more time?
So basically I was saying that studies show that police departments that hire people who have a higher education level, who go to college, have a lower rate of police brutality. So how do you feel like this affects society if one may or may not go to college?
I think it helps. Yes. I definitely think it helps. Different police departments, I guess, like in NYPD, you need 60 college credits to be a police officer. Other departments vary, but I think life experience matters, because if you have the kid that went to college and never had a job, then all of a sudden you come out and, he's a police officer, I don't think he's going to be as effective as somebody that actually has life experience, worked other jobs, maybe a little bit older, more mature. So I think it's a combination of things. Yes, education, but there's more to it. I think that you should put more education into the police department. This kind of like, it's a little bit of a tailspin, but when people talk about defund the police, I mean, I talk about, well, you're asking for a lot that costs a lot of money.
Right.
So, if you say, oh, police officers aren't trained for this, trained for that, I mean, what we deal with is so hard. You need more training, but instead of beating up or using something as a punishment, this cop did this wrong, we need to take away, we need to add towards services. I have no idea. Listen, if I'm getting paid, you could sit me and educate me all you want. I'll sit 2 years in the police academy if I have to, as long as I can pay for my family, and I mean, live, a life sustainable for a police officer. But we need to really focus on what we want from our police officers and how we get it, because sometimes that line is broken up. People expect this and expect that. We're like, well, how do you expect this when this is what's given?
Now, how hard was it for you to become an officer in NYPD? Because that's interesting that you need 60 college credits. I have to do more research on that, with other police departments, but that sort of like caught my attention.
Well, when it always changes. There's a long waiting list for the police department right now in NYPD. But when I wanted to be a police officer, we were heavily underfunded. I mean, excuse me, let me rephrase that. Underpaid. I went, you know, the pricing of New York City, but when I was just starting the academy, it was 25,100. My paycheck was like $12 an hour in the academy, which for some people took a huge and major pay cut. So nobody wanted the job. And if you make the job under office. So it was a little bit easier in essence for me to get, I guess, on because of the right timing. Um, but I still had to require a lot of, there was a lot of requirements, but it was fast tracked. Okay, you still had to do a psych, you still had to do, and every police department is different. So I do psych, physical, have your college credits. I took the test before I had had the right amount of credits. So they'll keep it on hold for 4 years. So I was like, I got to finish school. Right. I want a career. This is what I want to do. So I rushed through school to get, those, I guess, help me out, to get whatever, to satisfy what I needed to be a police officer, but it was help fast track. But it still was a rigorous, process. It was a lot of things that went into it. And we had to type using a typewriter. Oh God. It's the first time I was using a typewriter to type up the applications and fill out all these forms. Old school. Like, I don't use a typewriter.
And I'm like, we just grab our phones. We're like, okay.
Now it's different. But so it's kind of, it was easier but hard, still very hard at the same time. Now it's just a little bit different.
Okay, cool. So Joel, my 10th question for you and final question would be, if there was a law that you could change, like any law at all, right? Why would you change it and what law would it be?
Ooh, it's a good one. Any law?
Any law, doesn't matter.
Wow.
Like, you can't put an elephant on a parking meter. I don't know who tried it. But it's a law here.
Oh my goodness, there are so many laws that shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? Because they came from a long time ago. Right. Like funny story, they had to get rid of the duel law because some lawyer challenged somebody else to a duel. Trial by combat. This is as of a couple of years ago.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Trial by combat, okay. But stand your ground. Ooh. I think stand your ground needs to be see, the problem is not the laws. Sometimes the problem is how they're implemented. So stand your ground needs to be something that is relooked at. And I've seen so many different cases of stand your ground. And I can go on and on and on. And it hasn't always affected a person of color. I'm just saying the law it's once again, we know the justice system's not perfect. We know it has flaws. We need to work on it and make them better and address the areas that need to be addressed. Stand your ground. I would definitely on the top of my list for revise.
That's a good one. I think that's I've asked officers in the past that question. I've had really good answers. I think this one's probably my favorite. The stand your ground one. Yeah, you're right. That one is a lot of gray area, in my opinion, and it just depends on that one's because studying wanting to be a lawyer, interning at different law firms. It's you get a lot of those cases, and I'm like, well, this could be this, and then it's really iffy, and I agree. So I would toss that one too. So But that's my 10 questions for you, officer. But now I'm going to give a word from our sponsors. And then you're going to jump to your 10 questions, and I'm ready.
All right, I'm ready.
So, thank you to the Birdie Eco School, Hey Blue Initiative, Central State Bank, Ben and Jerry's. Wow, I'm all over the place today. And Exceed Concierge. Thank you guys so much for making all this possible. All right, Joel, it is your turn, and
Okay.
I'm ready.
So before I get into mine, I just want to tell you a really fast story. So there was about, different programs, because it was in the comments, somebody wanted me to talk about it. One of my retired bosses. So there was a kid that was a family member to one of our kids or boxers that go to the gym. His brother was murdered, and it was basically going towards a cold case. Nobody really, it was hard to find witnesses for whatever reason. Like the police, the detectives were kind of stuck. I mean, we worked, the organization, cops and kids, worked effortless. Like we're cops, but we're working off duty, trying to figure out how we can go and find if anybody heard anything. The director of the program, Patty Russo, he put out a reward, like 15,000, anybody that had information. I mean, we worked effortlessly. Finally, we got somebody that said he, needs this to stop. He was, criminal past, reformed. I'm gonna find somebody. Anyways, long story short, we ended up finding a witness. He says, my nephew died like this. I heard was arrested and was sentenced. And my boss, I, and a couple other police officers went to the funeral in uniform. And this kid who's also going to be representing the Olympics, by the way. In boxing, comes from our program, but he was always, close to cops because he had the interaction, but a lot of people in the funeral weren't. But when they seen us come there, because it was heartfelt and we're close to the family, it really, like, people looked and you can tell that they knew we cared, because we did care. And that was the motivation also behind starting my nonprofit, Cops Who Care, because it's not about, that's why I said, call me Joel. I'm not working. This is what I'm a cop, but I care, outside of getting paid to do my job. So, all right, I'm talking too much. Let me get to these questions.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, let's see. I got them on my phone. All right. You ready? Okay.
Yes.
Should protest organizers or leaders be held liable for wrongdoing of unknown or known participants in their event, meaning in their protests?
Well, if that was possible, then it would be contradictory of a law, which technically would be like freedom of speech or freedom of religion. I mean, I guess you could have like a certain amount of money that someone would pay to get into something like that. But of course you can't flag like all bad people who want to do it, because like even felonies, although some of their rights have been stripped, they have a voice. Felons, sorry. Excuse me. But you know what I mean? Should they be held accountable?
Civilly liable.
And
I'll tell you why I'm asking that after your answer.
I think to a certain extent, yes, because if it's like, like if something happened, if I was throwing a party and like something happened under my watch, then it's like, hey, you know what I mean? Although it might not have been my fault, I might not have known it was going on, you still are held accountable for the behavior or something that's gone on and like at the party or in the area, you know what I mean? So that one's very tricky.
It is. I'm sorry. I gotta come. Because
you're good.
we need to talk about. And the reason why I asked you is because it's probably headed to the Supreme Court. I forgot what state, but there's a police officer that was in 2016 was at a protest, doing his job as a police officer. Anyways, an unknown bystander hit him with a rock, and I don't know the severity of his injuries. I hope he's okay, but he sued the organizer of that rally for what happened. So, I mean, the more I look up different responses and I try to find non-biased, I really don't like opinionated media because I think for myself. It's tough. It's tough, and that's why so many different. I think UCLA, a bunch of lawyers and law programs talk about it, and they have, and it goes back and forth how they feel because in some parts, can you know, but in some facets, you do. Like, what if this person is, saying this organizer? I'm saying is saying, things like death to cops, and the organizers saying that, not individual people, and somebody goes and does something and a police officer's hurt. Right. Well, does it fall on that organizer because he set the tone for what he was doing? Which is why even Al Sharpton, which I don't always, sometimes whatever, but lately he actually said something that I have to give him credit for when he was protesting. He goes, if you're gonna do anything wrong or illegal, don't ride with, I don't want you around me. I'm calling the police, and which I thought was amazing. I was like, okay, this is what I think what people want to hear. The police want to hear on our side.
Right.
It's a tough question.
See, that I'm probably going to have to tell you no, only because the example you gave me, only because you can put a knife in front of somebody and, that's their choice to pick it up and use it or not. You know what I mean? If you're put in a room with someone you absolutely cannot stand, and then another person comes and puts a knife in the middle of you, they just set the knife down. They didn't say to use it. They didn't say to do anything. They just put it there. You know what I mean? I feel like it was that person's motive to pick the rock up. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't sitting there manipulating them, to use it. But see, that's tricky because in that instance, I would say no because, you know what I mean? But as an example, use like if you were to talk about the KKK, then like
citing a riot is a crime. So
that is a crime, right? And that's what's going through my head. Like legally, I was like, I don't know.
I'm trying to get you, girl. I'm trying to make you think.
Okay.
It is tough. There's no right answer, and that's how I feel. I don't know. I feel split on both accounts, and as a police officer I just hear something that other officers do worry about because it does happen, and there are protest organizer leaders that I have issues with, and I call them out just like they call us out. I'm like, I have an issue with your rhetoric that you're saying, because somebody acts in that and you set up a protest.
People to feel like they could do it, and they did. It's like, yeah.
Are you can you be held civilly? That's why I said civilly. Yeah. We got to see what the Supreme Court says if it goes there.
Right. That's a good question.
All right. Do you think, question number 2, do you think criminal profiling leads to racial profiling by the police? So well, I'm not insulting your intelligence. I'm just trying to give some backdrop. That's something that we go over, at least in the police academy, and NYPD Police Academy a lot. It is absolutely, illegal to racially profile,
right?
Criminal profile, and then it breaks down, what is criminal profiling, but now I'm asking you, do you think that criminal profiling, sometimes is a segue into racial profiling by police officers?
Yeah, depending on how the officer might have been raised, like away from the badge. Sometimes people's like beliefs and stuff trickle into like what they do. Like you could be having a really bad heartbreak, and I'm like, heart surgeon. That has nothing to do with saving this person's life. You know what I mean? They're two different things. So, yes, because some people's beliefs can be like, oh, well, he's African American and he's a thug. You know what I mean? So they said that the description was an African American male wearing a white shirt and gray shorts, and then another guy can walk out of the store with a white shirt and gray shorts or whatever it is, and then the officers are like, oh, well, you fit the description. Okay, well, I didn't do it. It's like I just feel like that goes for anything. It doesn't even have to be like a person of color. It can just be like anybody. Like if someone tells you a description and then it's like, okay, it just so happens that in society, if the individual happens to be a person of color, then that might be a little iffy, you know what I mean? Only because like of stereotypes that have been passed down. It's like, all black people are thugs, or all black women are loud. So it's sort of like, yeah. So I think that's also another tricky question, because I don't want to say 100% yes, because then that would be like, not all officers criminally or racially profile, but I do believe that if it's been like taught or it's something that they unconsciously do, then it can happen. Yes.
Yes. And I do agree with you. It can happen. I'm kind of speaking from New York, but also all over the country. We all remember the police department is not the military. We don't have like a uniform code of justice. We all do things a little bit different. Although maybe I'm biased, but I think in New York has a better, I guess, just overall education and resources to kind of put these things out, than other smaller towns or other police departments. But it still is something that's tricky here, because in the inner city, they're predominantly, kids of color are, where the crime is predominantly. And this is also, I'll go on forever. There was another story I had, but kid fit the description. He didn't do it, but he was pointed out, and he was pointed out by a woman of color, but she was wrong. So criminal profiling for us goes deeper. Like, okay, on this block, there's been 5 shootings. This gang, whatever it is, AB, block boys, are doing this. They wear these color clothes, they hang out over here. So their skin color might be black, but are you targeting them because of their skin color, or are you targeting them because of the criminal profile? It is tricky, and it can go south. Right. But you know what I mean? This is why education is very important. This is why we all need this education, because, somebody that's not a police officer wouldn't look at it like that. There's no way you would think of it like that.
Right.
Yeah. So just things to think about. Okay. Question number 3. What's the difference between, in your opinion, of course, between a bad cop and a cop that made a bad decision?
Ooh, okay. What's the difference between a bad cop and a cop that made a bad decision? Okay. A bad officer, no matter what it is, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter what call you're responding to. I feel like someone who isn't open-minded in general is just a bad officer. If you make bad judgments, we all make mistakes sometimes, you know what I mean? And that's easily reversible if it doesn't result in you killing somebody, you know what I mean? I feel like a bad officer just does everything their way. They let their biases get the best of them. They don't think through a lot of things. And when they're wrong, they don't admit that they're wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I think an officer who makes a bad decision will come out freely and be like, hey, I'm so sorry, or at least to the family, or whenever the case can be dismissed, declassified, everybody's like, hey, the officer can be like, hey, I'm so sorry. This is really what it was supposed to be. And, the chief, the police department can come out and be like, it was our fault, our officer, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like an officer who just doesn't want to own up to anything that they do ever is a terrible officer. I feel like that's with anybody in any job, you know what I mean? So
Great answer. I'm
Thank
just digging a little bit deeper because, these are quite, like, once again, I look at myself like I'm a black man who chose to be in the military, who chose to be a police officer, who happens to be a black police officer. So there's different perspectives I have on on everything depending what hat I'm wearing, even though I'm all one. First, I'm a black man. So I think that on the surface is, yes, very good, but like, let's go a little bit deeper. One of the biggest fears I have is, God forbid I ever have to, and I haven't so far, use my firearm and it results in harming someone or the death of somebody, and it was wrong. Maybe I thought this person had a firearm. Like, I literally had nightmares like, oh my goodness, this is what you've done, this is who you are, and then you made a bad decision.
Right.
So, I'm gonna get a little controversial right now, but
I'm good with that.
yeah, well, I'm good with it too. So, I think there's a big difference in certain cases, and a lot of people blanket all the cases. Oh, it's all the same. Like, as a police officer and understanding certain facts, and once again, it's my opinion. Not every police officer agrees with me. Not every person on civilian agrees with me, but there's a big difference between what happened to Mike Brown and Eric Gardner. In my mind, there's a huge difference, which is a whole nother conversation on its own, and leads to, like, my next question. I'm such a big mouth that ruined it, but but you know what I mean? Like, I think one was bad choice of judgment, and I think one was a bad cop.
Right, bad cop.
Yeah. Just different perspectives, because things get like that.
Well, which one did you feel was a bad officer, and which one did you feel was just it was misjudged?
Mike Brown.
Okay, bad officer.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, that bothers me a lot. And it bothered. It's important to know it bothers other police officers that I know that aren't black, other colors. So like, it's hard to really understand that not everybody. We're diverse. We think all differently.
Right.
And it's okay to think differently as long as we express it in a healthy, productive manner.
Right.
Okay. I'll get back to that. Shoot, I jumped the gun. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, I'll circle back to that one, my other question. But do you think privatized police can effectively replace traditional law enforcement agencies?
So you're saying, like, if it wasn't open to the public?
So,
or like military, where it's there, what they do and stuff, but like everything that goes on, it's like like classified.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'll explain a little bit deeper. So there's a movement, right? Abolish the police. There's a lot of movements now, but abolish the police is one of them. Privatized policing is being used in certain places, and they're used as security for the community. I know in Georgia it's happening, in Minnesota. Don't quote me on this, but I believe, but in Minnesota, this is also talks. Atlanta, yes. These ideas are coming up, and they're starting to implement them in some sort of way. So I was just curious if you think that, some people don't, the police are, they're not serving and protecting us. We need to get rid of them and maybe, hire privatized police because they're, if we pay them, they're for us.
Right.
So
I don't agree with abolishing the police. I do not agree with defunding the police. Only because I know a lot of people, I just feel like they need to be trained better. I feel like there needs to be a broader education system, but I feel like it needs to be more concise. Because dealing with all the issues, I feel like you guys as police, like you said, that like you guys are labeled to do a whole bunch of stuff that you guys aren't trained for. And I feel like that is not your guys' fault, but it's the job's fault. Like the description and the job, being that where policing had originated from to where it has come now, I feel like there's a whole bunch of gray area and it just needs to be like fixed. But I don't know if I agree with the privatized policing, only because I know that a lot of bad officers, I don't know, because I might have the definition wrong, but I know a lot of bad officers get away with a lot of stuff, and I just feel like making it more private, there's different motives behind a lot of things, and I think that's, yeah, I don't know if that's a very good idea.
And I agree with you. It can never replace. That's why I said replace. I think that some Vice, actually, if you want to look it up, did a special on privatized police. I think it was in Detroit. In a town. But so some of the pros is like, yes, they, kind of connect with who, I guess, they're who they work for. They're more, with the community, like if the community's putting it out. But the problem is, you know what I mean, who's paying for, you know what I mean, they're, it's more or less security. So it's really not privatized police.
Right.
It's security. And, they might be trained in non-lethal tactics more, and all these other things that are positive, but they can never replace traditional policing. Can they work side by side? I mean, if that's something that townships and different counties want to do, I mean, sure.
Right.
But never can replace policing. All right, let's see. Okay, this is another tough one. Is there a disproportionate amount of violent crimes within the African American community compared to other communities?
The black male is like the number one hunted species on Earth. It's just, I know that's very controversial, but it's true. Like, regardless of a lot of the positivity that does go on, there's still a lot of things that I feel like are most definitely racially charged. And as, my generation, is coming up, and it's like, hey, we're going to start defying social norms. We're going to start pushing for change and things like that. I feel like a lot of that is being uprooted. I feel like, given like an example, okay, the school to prison pipeline, that's a perfect example to your question. I feel like in low poverty neighborhoods, although there can be a lot of Caucasian neighborhoods who are in poverty, yes, but that's not a lot. That's not what everybody talks about, because everyone goes to black on black crime, which I don't think exists. I think it's just like a pawn, but that's besides the point. You have the school to prison pipeline, where in these low funded areas in the black community, where these kids get in trouble because they're going through trauma or something at home, and these schools don't pay for licensed therapists, but they do pay for resource officers. So the officers in the school expels the kid ends up back on the street, the kid ends up committing a crime, the kid ends up going to a facility, JC, and it's like, you know what I mean? I feel like in society, I know it seems like a very negative outlook, and I'm trying to make it as positive as possible, but it's the truth. So there's like a lot of, it's just negative. And I feel like there's a lot of boosting to that, such as a lot of people don't know that Africa is extremely rich. You know what I mean? Buildings and malls and cities, it's like all they show you is black on black crime, and black people are thugs in this community and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And there's plenty of Caucasians who go through the same thing. But it just goes back to way back in the day, and I think it's just generational. It just carries down, just goes. So yes, to answer your question.
Okay. So okay. that was good. That was a lot. So
Okay.
so you do think that there's a disproportionate amount of violent crime within the African American community. It's due to other things, and it's due to but yes, okay. So I think
No, I was just gonna say, if you were talking crime like in and of itself, like black on black crime, I feel like that stems from a lot of trauma. That's why I brought up the school to prison pipeline. So that's just been taught, though. That's just generational. It's just been passed down. A lot of people don't understand the pain and suffering of being a person of color. So someone else looking from the outside in is going to see that as, oh, they're just thugs and they're just fighting each other. You know what I mean? When little do a lot of people know, a lot of the community has been turned against each other. So, yeah.
so. That's very, that's a great answer, and I can agree. I do agree with you, and the reason why I asked that question is because I hear a lot of, well, black on black crime. Well, and that's phrased wrong. You can say where it comes from, which I do agree with you, but I'm more focused on what are they trying to convey? What are they trying to say? And I think the question that I gave is what they're trying to say. They're just saying it, ineffectively, and maybe sometimes it might come off offensive to others. Done some stats by excuse me, federal stats like 2019, number of murder victims for black men was 7,484 as compared to whites, which is 5,787. African Americans make up 13% of the population. So in the African American, and we know we hurt who we look like, or we hurt who is, we're in proximity and live next to. So yes, there's, I mean, black people kill black people more, than, they would kill an Asian. White people kill white people more than they would kill some, a black person. Asians kill more. But yes, there is a lot of a disproportionate amount of violence in the African American communities. But like you said, there's a lot of reasons. 21% of African Americans live in poverty.
Right.
52% of homeless families are black.
Right.
Identify as black. So, prison to, school to prison pipeline. You know what I mean? Finances matter. Like, honestly, and I've always believed, if you can control, your economical, the finances, you can fix everything else. Policing in America is easier. It is, and so yeah, we agree. We're on the same page.
That's good.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's see. Move it along. Sorry, I called some questions out of
You're
order.
fine.
Oh yeah. Do you believe Eric Gardner died because he was allegedly selling cigarettes? And I know you're familiar with the case, so if you want me to specify more, I can.
I mean, you can specify more. I just I hear that case and I sort of think, I know it's similar to the George Floyd thing, but it's not very similar, but it's similar. Sometimes I'm like, you know what I mean? It came out that it was, George Floyd, it wasn't counterfeit. You know what I mean? And I guess I don't know how to see that, because before I wanted to get into the law, I was like, I was definitely and then I don't know. I just see things from a very different point of view now. And I don't know how to answer that, because that's a tough one, because everyone's going to see it a different way?
You know, you know what? Your answer is the same as a lot of my friends, a lot of police officers. Some feel it. You know, you know, was tragedy. Some people feel this police officer was, a bad police officer. That's why I brought up the bad, decision versus, bad, police officer. What was in his heart? Do
Right.
I feel he was singled out because of his skin color? No, they knew who he was, and
Right.
I don't believe in talking bad about anybody and trying to
Yeah.
bring up the case, but they were familiar with him. He had a lengthy criminal record for certain things, and neighborhood policing, what people were pushing. That's what the NYPD was doing at that time, because a lot of store owners were complaining that this was a concern. Bottom line is, I don't think police officers should be dealing with that. Once again, you know what I mean? These are issues that we have to bring in the community. Why were these officers put in that position? And, I noticed how, I think, like I said, I didn't see him tase or hit, or, it was terrible, that it happened. I'm not justifying his actions to jump on his back, but, I asked a couple people, what would you do? And these are attorneys and they stood quiet. Like, how would you, if somebody refused to be arrested, that size, he was, passively aggressive, but how would you bring this man who
Right.
is a large man and, as an intimidating size down, and they called the ambulance, fast. EMS got in trouble too, because, they felt that they didn't move fast enough. I mean, it's a terrible situation. This man should have never lost his life. But
Right.
I feel personally there's a distinct difference from that. And even the George Floyd. The George Floyd pissed off everybody. I don't know what cop says that, NYPD people went to Facebook to express, how frustrated they were at what he did.
Right.
And it was amazing, I think, for people to see how many white police officers, said the same, felt that way. I wish that was more sensationalized, how other police officers felt, because I think it's very important to understand we all feel different about different things. We're human beings and we have different opinions. Sometimes it's not one opinion.
I agree. Because I know here in Brevard County we had two minors. Well, one was actually an adult, but 18. Like it's 18. You know what I'm saying? But they were just shot and killed here in Brevard County. Long story short, it was like basically the question is, was the cop in the right, or the kids in the wrong, things like that. I just feel like, even though people commit crimes like every day, you know what I mean? I feel like in that situation, it's like, although he was a criminal and although you guys were judging him based on his record or whatever it was, and people were complaining and stuff like that, like, did they ever stop to think, like, you know what I mean? Like, did anyone ever stop to think and talk to this man? You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like their first reaction was unnecessary. But
that's fair. And I love the way you think.
Thank you.
The more we're exposed, because we can have different opinions, but the more you're exposed and the more you talk to, police officers, the community, just different people, you see things in a little bit in a different light. So it gives perspective. That's why I said, in the beginning, people lack perspective sometimes.
Right.
We see, moving along. I talk too much.
I can talk all day. It's okay.
Let's see. Okay, in your opinion, what police interactions less tense or dangerous?
Wait, so I'm sorry, restate the first part of your question.
I'm
Cut out
sorry.
just a little bit.
Yeah, in your opinion, what can police officers and civilians uh, do to make police interaction, whether you get stopped by the police, pulled over, whatever it is, less tense and dangerous for
Education,
both of them?
education and exposure. I feel like experience, like you were talking about, you know what I mean? Like when you're talking about the racial profiling and the criminal profiling, just as you just said with Eric Gardner, like I'm saying, like just because he was a criminal in society's eyes doesn't mean he deserved to die. So I feel like there's certain things that people need to understand and learn about each other to make the interactions less chaotic. I feel like if more people were able to just sit down and connect on just a human being level, they would go a lot smoother. You know what I mean?
Education definitely plays a major factor. Like I'll give you some of my experiences. So you get a radio run of, well, in the past, because I'm not on patrol no more, but a radio run of something happens, and they're like, you know, assault in progress. The description: female, black, about 18, wearing a yellow shirt, curly hair. We see you. Excuse me, ma'am. Can we talk to you? What? What is it? What are you doing? What do I'm not putting all the blame, but there's things we all can do to make it safer for us both. Once again, officers, the last thing that an officer wants is, he wants to go home to his family. You don't know, women carry guns, people carry weapons.
Right.
I don't know what's happening. So I'm going to you tense because of what I heard. But if a person can also de-escalate as well, and I'm not putting the ownership on them, but we all can do things to take a step back and just kind of respect each other on a human level. Ma'am, I need you to just wait right here.
Right.
Please keep your hands in plain sight. I'm going to explain to you what was happening. And if you're irate, if your hands are in your pocket, because these are things, it's because I'm black or whatever it is, sometimes that'll make this tense. Or vice versa with the police, all of a sudden we hear the radio run and we cut you off with the car and, already putting you in so I think people need to really just take a step back. Police need to be tactical, understand where police come from, and also understand where this civilian is coming from, because there's plenty of people that have stopped with perfect descriptions. Tell you the truth, there's some people jealous of other people that, like, this person has a gun, blah, 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 and the person didn't or whatever, but like these things happen. So, we need to be able to talk and be treated with respect and as a human level. I don't want to be called "F you pig," why you stopping me, and you don't want to be treated like you're subhuman. So we need to really just understand where we both come from.
Right. I agree.
Okay, let's go. Uh, um, should qualified immunity be taken away from police officers?
Can you explain to me what qualified immunity is? Okay.
Sorry, I was going to get to you.
You're okay.
So qualified immunity is one of the hot topics, of course, with police officers. So qualified immunity has to do with government officials. So police officers in it. There's other people that are covered under qualified immunity, and it protects them civilly from acting and doing their job in good faith. So of lawsuits, they were protected under qualified immunity, so the family couldn't sue the police officer indirectly because he was acting in good faith. But I'll get, after your answer, I'm going to get a little deeper.
Okay.
You'll see.
See, I figured that's what that meant, but I wasn't 100% sure. I was like, okay, I think I see where he's coming from. I can't remember what the term is called in law, but I was like, it sounds sort of familiar. I mean, that's a tough one because there's a lot of things that a lot of people go to court for, and it's not even worth going to court for. There's also a lot of things that if, you know, you have a bad officer, the officer's in a wrong, they don't deserve to be protected. It's like, you need a fair trial. We're going to go to court, and, you know, the jury and the judge can figure this out. You know what I mean? Like, let the justice system work how the justice system works. You know what I mean? Like, that's like playing Uno, just getting like a free wild card. Like, you know, you sort of just get a free pass, and I don't really agree with that.
It's once again, these are my type of controversial, tough questions because I mean, you know, even friends, get rid of qualified immunity. I said, what police officer do you think is going to work? I'm not. I'll pick another job. Right. So here's the thing. So yes, some bad officers have been protected by qualified immunity, but it's not supposed to work that way. I think we get tied into the law instead of how it's being implemented, because because it clearly says, and now, you know, the Supreme Court has made one thing. I'm not going to get into it because it's a whole nother conversation. It said one thing, and lower courts have said another, and you know, I mean, it's a controversial topic, but here's the thing about it. Qualified immunity is not supposed to protect an officer or, you know, someone else, an official, a government official, if they were reckless. If certain things apply, they're not supposed to, because I have these arguments with people all the time. And I said, I'm, feel this type of way. Why are you going after the wrong? I don't think, go after the wrong cop. Go after the judge that knocked that down, because it's on them. And I think we place a lot of blame on certain systems, and I'm, this part I'm kind of defending police. There's a lot of blame to go around with failed systems, and I think maybe we need to hold some of these judges accountable, because some of these shootings, I said he got qualified immunity, but that was completely reckless. Right. So how would that pertain to my qualified immunity? I tried to give someone CPR and the person passed away, or I did something wrong. I was acting in good faith. Right. So, it's a catch 22.
Yeah.
So, all right, moving on. What do you, why do you think so few officers that have been indicted, the ones that have been indicted, and in charge for killing unarmed or non-lethal armed, I think there was 25 unarmed Caucasian men that were killed by police last year. So I say people, anybody, are convicted. So why did they lose these officers that are indicted? Why are they not convicted in court? Why do you think that's continuing happening?
I feel like some of the reason is because I feel like nowadays a lot of judges don't want to deal with it. They're like, okay, well, another case, same thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
but what about the juries?
I feel like, because you have to take this really, really long test to become a jury. Like, you have to go through everything to make sure you're not biased and things like that. I feel like nobody gets into their roots in the justice system anymore. Like, I feel like people don't really see something like that as important. So the less people who push for it, I feel like it's not going to happen. Like, I know it's sort of weird to say, And a lot of the times I just feel like it depends on the officer, it depends on the police department and their policies, and then it just depends on the court system. And there's a lot of bad people who get away and they, get indicted, and it's like whatever. I don't agree with that. That's also controversial.
I'm a controversial type of guy.
No, it's all good. I like it. I'm thinking. But because you could throw race into that, like you could throw so many things into that. My answer to your question, I'm just like in my head, I'm like, I don't know. It really just depends. That one, honestly, it just depends.
I think activists really need to kind of look into that then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And really, well, why do these things happen deeper than the surface? Because everybody will say race, race, race. And I'm not saying that race doesn't play a role, but you got to think deeper than that. There's a reason why these things are happening. And once again, I hold everybody accountable. I hold police officers accountable. I hold doctors accountable. That's another conversation about the medical field. You know what I mean? Judges accountable. I want everybody held accountable because I might be held accountable. Right. And I understand that. But I've noticed in certain cases, once again, you can get deeper in another conversation with that, but certain judges didn't allow the jury to hear certain pieces of evidence because they felt that would taint the case. So a lot of
crazy to me. I know.
And it is crazy. It is crazy. So, I mean, once again, am I anti-judge? No. But, I mean, let's be honest. These people are elected officials.
Right. And you need to know how to do your job. Like,
but it's up to the community, and it's hard that people don't always know this information. You know what I mean? I've been saying the same stuff I'm saying now, literally 5-6 years ago. Some things catch on, some people agree, some people don't. But you know what I mean? This movement you're hearing like now happening, like these thoughts, these have been the problems. If you know your seat is coming, or if I don't like the way a judge is operating, hey, they got a date where they're gonna have to try to be reelected if they want to keep that. I think the community really needs to dig down and start paying attention because we're public servants. We work for you. Right. So the police department will veer off a little bit. This officer you felt did this. What happened? What are the particulars of the case?
Right.
And I mean, so I think some of it that I've seen have been some judges, and not saying every police officer that was indicted I agree with that should have been charged, found guilty, convicted. I'm just saying that I've seen some cases tainted.
Yes.
And I was like, that doesn't, why wasn't that allowed? That would have changed the opinion of the jury, but hold them accountable. Okay. I thought I asked 9 questions. Let's see.
You're on your 10th one? If it's 10, it's 9.
So what's the difference between bad cops, good cops? Taxes of cigarettes, is there? Yes. Yeah, I'm on number 10.
All right, question 10.
In the case of, and this is also another one, a very controversial topic, and this one I understand it didn't sit well with a lot of people, and there's my perspective is maybe a little bit different, but it's definitely something that was a tragedy. But in the case of Miss Taylor, Breonna Taylor, what are some key facts leading up to her death that were lost in our national conversation?
That she was Black. I feel like the only people who cared about that were the people of color. I know that's not a fact that a lot of people would reside, but I feel like that was extremely important. The police, I can't remember which one it was, his criminal record, because just recently it came out that he had a few charges of, I do believe it was like sexual assault on children. I have to like retouch on that one. I'm not sure if it was domestic violence or something like that, but I'm pretty sure it has something to do with that. I feel like that's something that's really important. The fact that she was sleeping, okay, I don't know. There's just, that case is, yeah, that's
tough. No, I
it's
hear
just,
you.
yeah, like there's just a lot of things that honestly I feel like that was such a like, I know I'm not an officer and I can't put myself, in your shoes, like literally, but I just feel like there's a lot of things in that case that was like, really, like, come on now. And for the Supreme Court to still be debating it, it's like, how? You know what I mean? I just feel like there's so many, and regardless of if you're an officer, because I've talked to officers and they were like, well, I feel like a lot of people perceive facts differently and things like that, and as a cop we have to do certain things. I'm like, okay, I understand, but as a judge and like a jury and like as a lawyer, there were just so many things that you could just flat out be like, there's no way. Whoever their defendant is doing a really great job, because I don't understand how it just keeps getting pushed further and further back.
This was my final question, and the reason why I left it for last, because it's yes, it was a tragedy. It's tough. I mean, she was killed. But I'm gonna look at it from a different angle and kind of like work with me. Okay, so I don't watch the news. I stay away from it. You know why? Because I'm tired of opinionated pieces. I choose what opinionated pieces I want to hear and I take it into perspective. When I look at research, I try to find the most non-biased, bipartisan articles. I look at federal stats. I look at, those are things. And I know numbers don't always
right.
everything, but it's hard because emotion gets involved in certain things. So kind of like what I was asking before with do you think Eric Garner died because he was selling cigarettes or because he was black? We need to. It's tough and it's emotional because I want people to let's think deeper and find out the issues of the substance of where did this start. So when we look at this case, right, and like I said, I looked at facts, no opinions. I can share with you later links and stuff, all facts of what leading up to whatever. We're missing the breakdown of what went wrong. You got to think all the officers that went in and did search warrants. I know in New York City, NYPD, there's a lot that goes into a search warrant, obviously, because you're entering someone's home. Your home is a private place. There's a lot that goes into it. I can't speak about other police departments because I don't know every other police department's procedure, of that. I mean, if it was universal rules, maybe some of this would be mitigated. But police officers have hit wrong houses by mistake. But so one is when the police officers went in, whether a knock or they knocked or didn't knock isn't the issue for me. Is why were they there? So they were there because they were looking for somebody and the search warrant.
Right.
Well, I want to see what went into that search warrant.
Right.
Because the officer that signed out the search warrant just got fired.
Right.
And they said his actions in obtaining the search warrant, this is what the department said, wasn't it wasn't in good practice of how the department wants to be viewed and seen.
Right.
So that sounds hairy to me. So you because I look at myself as an officer, you sent me into a home one officer got shot first, because I'm not blaming him, he's defending himself. He didn't know. He said he didn't see the officer. He just shot blindly in that direction. I get it.
Right.
What if that officer died?
Right.
So naturally, if you were there and we were there and we're partners, and I'm not saying I agree with all the shots or was things reckless or not. My whole thing is the person that signed out this search warrant wasn't there.
Right.
How did they get the search warrant? Now, I don't have all the facts, but that's mindset opinion goes to. I want to see that because apparently something wasn't right in that search warrant, according to the police department.
Well, that's what a lot of people yeah.
Now, I'm saying it since the beginning. Like, as soon as I was like, I know how search warrants are done. I'm not saying, and people are like, oh, about the cops. The cop was shot. Like, I understand. He walked in. He didn't know what he's getting into. You know what I mean? I would be mad at the officer that signed out the search warrant, quite frankly. But, so was there perjury? What about the judge? Should the judge have signed this off? I think we started, even though her demise, an unfortunate demise, happened at the end with these officers shooting. I think we should have started at the beginning. Well, why and what was in that search warrant? And I think it just totally got overlooked. That's why I said, what were some of the key facts you think that led up to this case? And I didn't pick so much skin color. I mean, I get it, and I know the numbers, and but the fact of the matter is they shot. Some information is always given out opinionated and off. They according to the details of they were both standing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. She died unnecessarily. Why did she die unnecessarily? Why was she?
I agree. A lot of it is screened, though, I can say, in my opinion. A lot of people don't know until because we're just recently figuring out all the stuff that you're saying. You know what I mean? Like, it's not something that was there the first minute. It was what it was what it looked like, and that's what everybody ran with. But that's why I was like, as you start getting into the case, there's so much to it that's like, why even keep putting up with this? Obviously, you know what I mean?
So it's like you're trying to get a conviction against them. But I mean, are they the most but you also got to take into consideration, put yourself in their shoes. If you're doing warrants and you're going into that apartment, now your partner got shot, you know what I mean? And once again, I'm just playing devil's advocate. It's hard. You know what I mean? There's no right answers. Now everybody's, because, we all get criticized, police. I get criticized for a lot of things. I'm a sellout. I'm this. I'm like, all right, so, feeling the heat from the community that, well, I just did my job. This went south. I didn't know, or, it's a failure on the system. You know what I mean? But let's look at who takes the biggest hit. Let's look at where the real issue was. And it always lied with, why were they there? What was in that search warrant? And I don't know. But let's look at that. That is the issue, why they were there. And that's from a police. I wouldn't know that if I wasn't, a police officer. That's how my mind is thinking. It's not who's wrong, who's right. Well, what led to that happening?
Right. Well, see, a lot of people think that way. I think a lot of people don't. Like I said earlier, like a lot of people don't get into like why things are the way they are. I feel like people take an opinion and they roll with it. You know what I mean? Like, no one, since you say like you are a police officer, so you're asking the question, well, why were they even there? You know what I mean? And me wanting to go on the law, I'm like, well, what was the warrant for? You know what I mean? Well, why was the warrant? Like, what judge signed? You know what I mean? And a lot of people, they just are blind. They have tunnel vision, and then they disregard everything. And I'm like,
it's hard. I wouldn't think 100% the way I do if I didn't have that background. Policing, like I see other things, and and you know what I mean? Like, listen, there's been other races the doors have been hit, and it's, so listen, policing is a hard thing. We all know that, that there's things that go wrong. all the time. And once again, one life is too much taken in a wrong manner. But the whole thing is just trying to make it better, and not beat up on community or beat up on oh well, it's her fault, she dated a criminal, or well, it's the police fault, they broke in the door. Like, what
Right.
happened? Let's not get into. And I'm telling you, I turned off media because I started seeing it change my opinion. I'm like, I don't need people to give me an opinion. I
Right.
need the facts. What happened? Where are the ABCs?
Right. I agree. So, okay, Officer Joel, sorry. I told you it's going to be all night. So those are 21 questions, or 20 questions. Now we have our 21st question. It's going to come from the audience.
Okay.
So we're going to see what question we have. Okay, that's a good question. So how do you hold yourself accountable? Well, so I'm guessing that's for both of us. Okay. You can answer first if you would like.
It's up to you.
Okay, cool.
I'm on your show, girl.
I guess I'll go first. I don't know. I feel like holding yourself accountable also comes with integrity, like doing the right thing when like no one else is watching. Also, it has a lot to do with your pride, although a lot of people say that their pride gets in the way. I feel like, knowing yourself. If you genuinely like believe that something isn't the way that it needs to be, then those are just your morals and, you go with it. But if something's like, you just know it's just ethically and morally wrong, whether you believe in it or not, I feel like you need to check yourself. You know what I mean? It's like, I like vanilla ice cream, you like chocolate ice cream. I don't really care for chocolate, but it's like, I think that, I don't know. I think it really just depends on the situation you're in. And just self-reflecting, like, how are my actions hurting other people's? How are my actions affecting myself? How is this going to affect me a few days from now? Is it even going to affect me a few days from now? You know what I mean? I feel like holding yourself accountable is seen as a negative thing when it's really not. Like, I feel like it's something that needs to take place every single day, not just when you do something or you make a mistake and it's wrong. Like, oh, well, you need to own up to this. So
I think that's a beautiful answer. And I totally agree. I just have a little bit of also a spin to it. So not everybody's moral compass is the same.
Right.
So yes, I hold myself accountable with integrity, and all these, phrases that, describe who I see myself as, moral standards, this and that. But what if we don't have the same moral standards?
Right.
So therefore, there needs to be entities to hold us accountable also.
Right.
And that's what I allude to. Yes. People like, oh, who holds the police accountable? How are the police going to hold accountable themselves? I mean, I think in a lot of cases they do. In a lot of cases they absolutely do. In some cases maybe they don't. Remember, 50 states, there's tons of different police departments all over. But who holds them accountable? And who holds, the people that hold them accountable? So if you feel that something was unjust with judges, right? Well, the judge works for you, right?
Right.
He doesn't need to have a job. And it's your job as a civilian, as an American, to make sure that if that person, did something that segued away from your moral beliefs and then this is the way to go about it. It's the same thing with education, because it happens in education. It happens in the medical field. We just don't hear about it. Medical malpractice deaths are insane. You know what I mean? And I'm a medical technician in the military, and I love doctors and nurses, but we got to hold people accountable, and I understand. So that's my thing. We need to do more to hold ourselves accountable, but we need proper systems to hold us accountable and us as individuals.
Right. I agree. Thank you, Joel, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Talking. I really appreciate it. You had some very insightful questions. I learned way more police terminology. So now I have a book now, I have a file. I'm just gonna start pulling them out. I have one last question before you go.
Yes.
That is, do you still have love for me? Like, we still got love for each other.
Of course.
Thank you so much. The next 21 questions, guys, that's it. It'll be on January 15th, 2021. Happy New Year's to you guys.
And Happy New Year's. I'm so rude. Happy New Year. Started the new year off with a bang.
Yes, we did. I would like to say thank you to the sponsors again, the Birdie Eco School, Ben & Jerry, Central States Bank, and Exceed Concierge. The next time you guys will see me, I will be interviewing Mike Almonte of the NYPD. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Bye.